Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core studio. Welcome to the show. So we have finally made it, the final spoiler season episode. I assume I didn't miss any spoilers now at this point. I think I caught up with all the lost spoilers too. Let's jump into it. So we've got quite a few to go over, including some very exciting ones like Dragon Claw Strike. It is a sorcery for, again, either 6 or 3 mana, somewhere in between, depending on what you're paying. In Teamer, basically, double the power and toughness of target creature you control until end of turn. Then it fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. This, actually, I can see seeing a good amount of play. Like, this is a very solid card. Now, typically, again, when it comes to, like, removal, obviously, you really want it to be instant speed. Now, you might make an exception for something like this, though, when you're obviously in big creature colors. That's what Teamer's kind of all about, essentially. And yeah, being able to say, you know what? Let's just make this one creature hit incredibly hard. I mean, again, doubling the power, doubling the toughness, and also pretty much guaranteed to take out whatever creature you want that an opponent controls. You're gonna have a creature, most likely, that is at least half the power and toughness of the biggest creature an opponent controls, most likely. So yeah, this is a nearly guaranteed removal of one of their creatures, unless it's indestructible or whatnot, but still, nearly guaranteed removal. And already, when it comes to doubling up the power and toughness, the going rate is, I mean, these days about 2 mana, typically. There are some, like, 3 mana ones, too, but yeah, basically 2 mana. Yeah, I'll pay 1 extra to take something out as well. So yeah, this can actually be a very solid card, and of course, if you just are looking for like a double power toughness card, yeah, add this one in as well, and be like, oh yeah, free removal with it too? Great. And I do say 3 mana, but it's like, if you get the perfect fixing for it, but that's the assumption. And if not, you can still use it in another deck, I guess. Anyways, okay, moving on. We've got Reputable Merchant, the other multicolored card that was spoiled today. A 2/2 human citizen next to a turtle, which carries all the supplies, I guess. For 6 mana again, or 3 mana in Abzan. When this creature enters, dies, get a counter on target creature control. Limited card. Okay, let's move forward. And we're going to move on to some green cards, including, my goodness, Dragon Sniper. A 1/1 human archer for a single mana. And yeah, Vigilance, Reach, and Death Touch. That is a lot going on all in one card, and all incredibly relevant things, like, to each other, basically. Like, this is like, hey, I'm just going to keep attacking and blocking, and you're probably not going to stop me because I'm a tiny little Death Toucher, and that's just what's going to happen. It's going to be hard for your opponents to, I mean, not just keep blocking, I guess, but it's going to be hard for your opponents to swing into this. And of course, when it comes to, like, Death Touch decks, yeah, add this in as another, hey, 1 mana Death Toucher. There's only so many of those out there, and getting more and more of them these days. Finally, one that does so many things for you. This one is great. And of course, keyword soup tribal kind of, decks out there that like just have all the creatures, all the keywords, and like they spread them around or whatnot. Yeah, this is going to be an amazing one for it as well. Again, being so low to the ground. Very cool. Next up, Trade Route Envoy. Yet another dog soldier. This one not on a mount though. I mean, if you noticed all the other ones I mentioned, the other episodes with they're on mounts, but they're on like different mounts, like a spider mount. Okay, anyways, a 4/3 dog soldier for 4 mana in green. When it enters, draw a card if you control a creature with a counter on it. If you don't draw a card this way, put a counter on this creature. Probably limited card. Next up, Sagu Pummeler. I'm mad. 4/4 beast with reach for 4 mana. You can also pay 5 mana in total, exile from your graveyard, put 2 counters on, and a reach counter on target creature, activate a sorcery. Probably more of a limited card. If you really care about like certain kinds of counters, again, like reach counters, different kinds of counters, and spreading them around maybe, sure. If not, no. Next up, Sage of the Fang, a 2/2 human druid with a very weird wardrobe that costs 3 mana in green. When enters, put a counter on target creature, renew it out of the graveyard by exiling it and putting a counter on target creature, then double the number of counters on the creature, activate on the sorcery. This one could potentially see play, like, it's an edge case. It really is an edge case. There are certain commanders out there that, like, intentionally like to get things into the graveyard that can be utilized out of the graveyard, and if you happen to also have some counter synergies with that too, like, doubling it up could be great. I don't know if you're actually just gonna, like, include this in a counters build, potentially, where you're like, okay, I play it, and I get 1 counter on a creature, and then I really hope this gets taken out, so then I can exile my graveyard to double up those counters. I think more so you're gonna be hoping to, again, kind of have that approach where you already have ways to get this in the graveyard outside of, like, playing it, essentially. So, we shall see. Next up, Rain Veil Rejuvenator. Now, this one will definitely see some play in the right decks out there. 2/4 Elephant Druid for 4 mana. When it enters, you may mill 3 cards. I feel like Wizards do it more often, where it's like, you can if you want to, and it's like, okay, I guess. And then tap add amount of green equal to this creature's power, which has nothing to do with the milling. So basically, if you have a self-mill deck, you might just include this anyways, because it's like, okay, yeah, mill 3 on an ETB, that's not too bad, I guess. But also being able to just tap for 2, that's nice, just inherently. But of course, if you have any kind of pump effects, yeah, that's great. And there are already, of course, certain other creatures out there that tap based on their power. And if you've got a deck that has those in there already because you've got a bunch of like anthems or pump effects, yeah, include this as well. It doesn't really matter that it mills or not. Like, there are going to be certain times when it's like, yeah, maybe I scryed or I know what the top card of my library is, and sure, I'll mill those away. And there's other times where like, I don't really care about milling with this deck, so no, I'm not going to mill. Again, it's a May, so there you go. Next up. Knockout Maneuver, a sorcery for 3 mana in green. Put a counter to our creature control that deals damage equal its power to our creature opponent controls. I mean, we've got a lot of different kinds of, iterations of this and some better ones out there. Like, if you've got a deck that really cares about, like, all these, great. But it's not like Fight, where, like, Fight decks are looking for, like, every single Fight spell, essentially. and this is, like, you don't get, like, the Enrage effect for it. You're paying a bit more for it, so it's just okay. Next up. Inspirited Vanguard, it's a 3/2 Human Soldier for 5 mana in green. When it enters or attacks, endures 2. Yeah, it's probably a bit overcosted, really, for kind of what it... I mean, for War Commander, it is a bit overcosted, I should say. In a limited environment show, it's great, actually. Again, like, hey, cool, all right. Enters, and it's a 5/4, and then it attacks, and then it's a 7, 6. Cool. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Or you keep making more and more 2/2s. Yeah, I'd say that this is, again, for like an Aristocrat style strategy, it's like, okay, you're making 2 creatures for 5, but then you can eventually make more, maybe. Yeah, in a counter strategy, it's like, okay, it's not the biggest threatening thing in the world ever. So yeah, it's just not that great in Commander. Next up, Formation Breaker, a 2/1 beast for 2 mana in green. It's creature's power less than it can't block it, which is cool. As long as you control a creature with a counter on it, gets +1/+2. More of a limited card. Next up. Chamber of Doosan, a 4/2 Human Warrior Trample for 3 mana in green. Renew it out of your graveyard. Exile from your graveyard for 2 mana. Put a counter on it and trample counter to our creature. Again, if you specifically care about like different kinds of counters on things, cool. If you don't, probably not. Maybe like, and this is like a stretch, but again, like maybe if you really care about like low to the ground power, again, it is like a 4 power for 3. Like, sure, you may be like, okay, like that plus like the counter plus the trample. Maybe I'll include it. Maybe I'll try it out. Next up. Anok White Wayfarer, a 1/1 Dog Scalp that also is not on a mount for 2 mana in green. When this creature enters, mill 3 cards. You may put a land card from one of them into your hand. If you don't, put a count on this creature. Again, yeah, 2 mana for mill 3. That's not too bad on ETB. Yeah, if you've got a self-mill strategy, this could be a decent card potentially. Just depending on like what you're looking for out of those. But yeah, you're probably not gonna be like, oh yeah, I really care about this like in a +1 counters build. Probably not. Moving on to red, and the first one is kind of like red, but not really in like mono red decks. You have like all the colors. Here we go. Iridescent Tiger, a really cool card. 3/4 cat for 5 mana in red. When it enters, if you cast it, thank goodness Wizards put that, add Wooburg. Yeah, if they didn't, they'd just be like, wow, Wizards just combos with a ham sandwich and then some. Yeah, this is an interesting card for sure. It is basically a free spell. I had an entire kind of like deck built around like creatures that are free or technically free, and this is like technically free. Like you got to pay the 5 mana immediately, but like you get 5 mana back, and it's like perfectly filtered. So cool. When it comes to like what kinds of commander decks might want this, it's not like you just like shove this into any 5-color deck and you're like, yeah, well, it helps me cast my 5-color spell. Cool. And it's like, okay, well, it's a 3/4 cat. That doesn't really do much else. I mean, again, more so for, like, if you're trying to use and abuse creatures that are free or technically free, absolutely. If you've got, like, cost reducers and you can cast this for less, then you're actually kind of, like, technically getting extra mana out of it, or some, like, weird bounce things going on. It's a very cool card, absolutely. It's just, like, the edge cases kind of decks that are going to want it. But, yeah, again, if you've got, like, a free creatures deck like I do, yeah, make sure you check it out. Next up, we've got Wild Ride, a sorcery, single red mana. Target creature gets +3/+0, gain haste all turn. You can also harmonize it back out of your graveyard for 5 mana in total. I mean, we've got other cards like this. +3/+0 is quite nice. Like, if you need, like, again, like Zada type kind of cards like this, like, my goodness, like, that's a great pump effect. And again, haste is quite nice. And being able to recast it can be quite nice too, especially for Zada. Yeah, I mean, for specific decks, it can be great, but again, we already have, like, these kind of, like, really quick, kind of, like, heavy hitters, and, like, yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's definitely okay. All right, moving on. Twin Bolt instant for 2 mana in red, 2 damage divided, choose among 1 or 2 targets. Very limited card, I would say. Unless you, like, really care about a deck that, like, deals out, like, pings of, like, 1 damage. Like, that kind of deck might consider it. Next up, Rescue Leopard. Cool. 4/2 cat for 3 mana in red. When it becomes tapped, you may discard a card if you do draw a card. I mean, in a very specific, like, hey, I care about my creatures tapping without actually sending them into combat. Like, you know, like, oh, tap these creatures, do this, tap them, do that. Cool, absolutely. If you're sending it into combat to do so, probably not. It's going to get taken care of. It's only got 2 toughness, okay? Next up, Overwhelming Surge. We've got an instant for 3 mana in red, 3 damage to target creature, destroy target non-artifact, and you can choose one or both of those. So that's quite nice, but yeah, since it's like very limited again on like non-creature artifact, and it's 3 mana. I mean, most of these kind of like removal, like pick or choose, is usually like 2. So I would assume it's gonna be not really seeing all that much play. Next up, though, Fleeting Effigy. Really cool art in this one. A 2/2 elemental haste for a single red mana. Beginning of your end step, return this creature to its owner's hand. You also pay 3 mana total and get +2/+0 until end of turn. Pretty sweet card. I mean, it's basically like a shock. I guess technically Commander, but in like limited formats, it's like, okay, get out there and just shock. Cool. All right. Yeah, I mean, really weird not weird. Really interesting kinds of decks, I should say, could consider this one, where it's like, if you just care about kind of like the Blitz style creatures, where you're like, okay, you go hit, I get you back to my hand. All right, I get you out, I get you back to my hand. Like, if you've got, like, Impact Tremors, like, those kind of things in play, or, like, a weird, not a weird Storm build, I keep saying weird, a different kind of Storm build, where you also have, like, you know, Blitz-style things, where it's like, okay, I get it out, and it comes back to my hand, so I can just keep replaying them, and just having, like, a full grip all the time. Those are the kinds of decks that can really utilize something like this. I wouldn't just be utilizing it as, like, aha, I got 2 damage in, and it's like, oh, because if you don't draw it early enough, it's like, all right, I played it. What now? I can't attack because everything's large. Like, even not being able to attack with it, like, can still be a benefit for you, but just by playing it to replay it, to replay it, to replay it, to replay it every single turn again for just a single mana. So yeah, very interesting card for sure. Moving on, Alchemist Assistant. Adorable! A 2/1 monkey with lifelink for 2 mana in black. Renew for 1 in a black. Exile from your graveyard. Put a lifelink counter to our creature. Activate a sorcery. This one might be a little more relevant, I would say. Like, lifelink counters can be quite impactful. I mean, not that the other ones can't that I mentioned too, but like, yeah, that can definitely go a lot in certain types of strategies out there. Life gain is a very popular, very, very, very popular strategy out there. And certain commanders out there are like, hey, I dish out this much damage to all players, or this kinds of things, like certain types of effects. So if you can, like, get a lifelink counter on them, you're going to be gaining life whenever that's doing that. So definitely keep that in mind. And against Low the Ground is a 2/1 lifelink itself. And it's a monkey, and it's adorable. Moving on. Adored Crocodile. Not so adorable, though it does look like it's smiling. A 5/3 Crocodile for 5 mana in black. When it dies, create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. How does that happen? Like, okay, did this, like, crocodile, like, eat someone, essentially, is probably what that is, right? And then, like, you're like, oh, it got taken out. And the zombie druid's like, thank goodness! Oh, I've been in here for weeks. Anyways, renew it out of the graveyard for a single mana. Exile it, counter on target creature, only sorcerer speed. I mean, like, yeah, it's 2 creatures for the price of 1, but it's like 5 mana in total. And yes, it's got that, like, other, like, little benefit, but it's too little of a benefit for you to probably care about too much about. Nah, not too many decks are going to consider it. Next up, Unburied Earth Carver. A 2/2 human warrior for 2 mana in black that has pay 2, sacrifice a creature, put a counter on this creature. Very limited card. There are so many better sacrifice outlets out there. Next up, Sandskitter Outrider. 2/1 Goblin Soldier with Menace for 4 mana. When this creature enters, it endures 2. No, that's too much mana for not enough benefit. Sure, you can have a 4/3 Menace Goblin Soldier, not really all that good, I guess. I mean, for the most part, most commander decks out there, and or you could just be like, all right, I've got 2, creatures, 2/2 and a 2/1. And it's like, all right, you paid 4 for that. I'd rather pay 3 mana for 3 creatures. There are different ways to do that. Okay, next up. Assault Road Skirmish. Source for 4 mana. Destroy target creature. Create 2 1/1s. Again, hey, sacrifice end step. Yeah, I mean, again, when it comes to, like, removal, you probably aren't going to, like, utilize something that's this kind of inefficient for the most part, just for, like, the little payoff. I mean, not even, I mean, like, aristocrat style builds where your mind would go immediately, where it's like, okay, like, I get 2 free, creatures sacrificed. Okay, I get 2 free triggers, essentially. I get 2 death triggers, which is great. It's just the payoff isn't going to be big enough for you to be just like that inefficient when it comes to, oh, okay, like my removal. Let's make it a much worse removal spell to just get those 2 extra creatures potentially. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, it's not going to pay off for you. It's not going to be beneficial enough to be like, oh yeah, I'm so glad I got rid of my D-Spark out of my deck so I could use this. It's like, oh no. Why did I get rid of D-Spark? Okay, next up, we got Nightblade Brigade, a 1/3 Goblin Soldier with a really cool artwork on it. My goodness. For 3 mana in black, Death Touch mobilized 1 when it enters Surveil 1. Yeah, it's 2 creatures for the price of 3. You still get to Surveil 1. If you really care about Surveil, sure, the Death Touch is nice too. Like, I guess, like, if you care about all these things in concert, cool, but you need to care about literally all of those things. And if you don't, you're not going to utilize this well enough. Like, okay, like the mobilized one, like you can keep getting that each turn, which is nice, obviously. And maybe the Death Touch is enough to kind of like dissuade opponents from blocking. But like, am I going to count on that when I play this versus, say, Weaponcraft Enthusiast, which is a guaranteed 3 creatures, essentially, for 3 mana in my Aristocrat style strategy? I'm probably just going to stick with the Weaponcraft Enthusiast, even though this does have other ways to do it. This one's like 1 creature right away. You gotta wait to attack, and then you gotta attack again to get there. So it's like, okay, it takes some work to get there. It's not bad at all, but like, it's just a card that, like, again, there's very, 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 very good cards for certain strategies out there, and like these are trying to make it into those strategies, and it might not make the case. Next up, Kintry Nurturer, a 2/1 lifelinking human druid for 3 mana in black. When this creature enters, endures 1. Again, 3 mana for 2 creatures. There are worse things. There are also better things. Okay, we've been there before. Finally, though, Gurmag Rakshasa, a 5/5 demon for 6 mana with menace. When this creature enters, target creature gets target creature opponent controls gets -2/-2 till have turn. Target creature control is +2/+2. More of a limited card. That's a lot of mana for a maybe I'll take out a tiny creature and maybe pump one of my creatures and cool, I've got menace. Good for me. Yeah, probably not really gonna see how much play. Moving on, though, I mean, Wizards is just doing copy-paste right now at this point with a certain type of card. I feel like, less than a half a year ago, we kind of got, like, the first iteration of these, and we just keep getting them now. Wingblade Disciple. I'm sure if you like this kind of, design, which I think it's a cool design, or if you have this kind of deck already, you're like, oh, yes, more. Someone at Wizards literally has a flurry deck, and they're like, we have to print this one now, too. Haha. 2/2 Human Monk with flying for 3 mana in blue. Flurry. Whenever you cast your second spell, each turn, create a 1/1 white bird creature with flying. Again, we literally have seen this before. I'm pretty sure this is just a slightly less efficient one. This is at like 3 mana versus, I think the other 2 are at 2 that kind of make like 1/1s or 0/1s or whatever they're making, essentially. I think this is one that literally makes 1/1 flyers. But I think it's a 2/1 for the 1 mana less. That being said, basically the exact same thing. If you have those in your deck and you really care about, again, like the flurry type of effects, like these second spells, you're probably going to include this one as well. So yeah, if you've got a spell slinger type strategy, if you've got like other cards like this in the deck, you're going to be considering it already. So yeah, there you go. Next up, Veteran Ice Climber, a 1/3 human scout with vigilance for 2 mana in blue. This creature can't be blocked. When this creature attacks, up to 1 target player mills cards equal to this creature's power. Fun. Okay, so like very specific types of strategies like this one though, but like there are certain type of strategies out there that just kind of want like, again, like low to the ground evasive creatures, like the flying men type strategies. This one again is again a bit expensive when it comes to mana value somehow, right? When it comes to like a flying men strategy, depends on like if you're just in mono blue, maybe it's like, okay, yeah, there's only so many. This is, fully evasive. Again, it can't be blocked. I don't know why they took away the word unblockable. That made complete sense, Wizards. But yeah, it's unblockable. It's 2 mana versus 1. But yeah, you get vigilance, so it can stay back as a blocker, and it also can just mill. Again, target player. Again, up to 1 target player. Depends on whoever you want to mill. You can mill yourself if that helps you, if self-mill helps you, or you can mill another player. And eventually, if you like somehow pump this a ton, you can mill someone a lot as well, too. So it's like, it's an interesting card. It really is. It does a lot. It does a lot in a lot of different directions. Cool. Next up, Riverwalk Technique. Instant for 4 mana in blue, choose 1. The other target non-land permanent puts on top of their library, counter target non-creature spell. Very limited card. This is, like an improvement, I guess, to some really old cards that are like, hey, put something on top of the library. Yeah, but like, yeah, countering a non-creature spell for 4 mana, that's like, oh, okay, that's a lot to hold up there for that. Okay, moving on. We've got Sibsig Upraiser, a 2/1 zombie advisor for 3 mana in blue. When it enters, look at the top 2 cards of your library. One of them goes in your hand, one goes in your graveyard. If you have like an ETB deck and you really care about, again, like, some yeah, decent. It's not a bad ETB at all. Like, again, like, you're getting the best card out of your top 2 in your hand. If you care about your graveyard, that's money on top of that as well, of course. So yeah, I mean, I could definitely see an ETB deck considering it. And of course, if you are a deck that really cares about your graveyard even more so, absolutely. It's an interesting card for sure. I mean, yeah, no, there are definitely worse ETBs out there to use and abuse with blinks and stuff like that. Next up, Ice Ridge Serpent. Some cool art on that one. 3/3 Serpent for 5 mana with a very angry fish on it. And it looks more like a fish than a serpent to me. It's like a fish serpent. Okay, anyways. When it enters, return target creature ball controls to owner's hand. Yeah, very limited card. 5 mana for that. No, thank you. Next up, Focus the Mind. Instant for 5 mana in blue. The spell costs 2 less if you cast or spell this turn. Draw 3, discard a card. Okay, so if you are, again, doing the whole spell slingery type thing, or, you know, cost reduction, and, I mean, cost reduction plus this in, like, a spell slingery type build could be pretty awesome. You are already casting it for just 3 mana to draw 3, discard 1. I mean, the going rate, I mean, these days, at instant speed even, we have, like, an instant speed divination, right? Cost 3 mana in total, 2 in a blue, draw 2. This is draw an extra 1, discard an extra 1, for that same cost if you've cast or spell that turn. So again, if you can consistently do that, great. If you're paying 5 mana for this, not worth it. But yeah, if you've got like a, again, spell slinger type strategy, or again, like a reduced cost type strategy, especially for in sorceries, obviously, yeah, this can be quite great for you. Like, this can be a card that can literally just cost you, again, in those strategies. Like, if you've got like Electromancer out, or, you know, some other ones too. If you got multiple out, you're like, oh, okay, cool, this cost me like 1 mana for draw 3, discard, because I cast another spell this turn as well. So yeah, Storm, it can be a very good card for certain types of strategies out there if you've got the right build for it. But don't just throw in any deck and be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll be casting multiple spells, because you're gonna end up holding up like 5 mana and be like, well, I don't have any other spells to cast, and I need to draw some cards, so I guess I'll do it before my turn. More often than not with that. So yeah, make sure that you are actually immediately taking advantage of this. Next up, Constrictor Sage. 4/4 Snake Wizard for 5 mana in blue. When it enters, tap target creature opponent controls, put a stun counter on it, renew it to your graveyard, exile from your graveyard. And guess what? Tap target creature opponent controls, put a stun counter on it, activate sorcery. I mean, again, for like maybe like specific like tap down decks, or for proliferate type strategies might consider it. But yeah, it's probably a bit more limited than that, because there's just better ones out there when it comes to stun counters. And finally, we have made it to white. Yeah, we went in reverse order on this episode. Storm Beacon Blade. You know, when it comes to like just like sick metal art for like a card, and you're like, man, this gotta be the most powerful thing of all time. And it's like, okay, it's good, it's okay, but like, there's gotta be a deck out there that's just like all like the coolest art cards of all time. They're like, those things look so powerful, and then they're just like really derpy cards that don't do all that much, but they look really like intimidating with how like cool the art is. Yeah, I like the art on this one. Artifact equipment for 2 mana in white. Equipped creature gets +3/+0. Equipped creature attacks, draw a card. If you control 3 or more attacking creatures, equip 2. Again, it's not bad. It is definitely not bad. Being able to, again, throw on, again, repeat card advantage in white, again, still is getting solved, and I appreciate that Wizards is putting efforts toward it, and this is a good effort to put toward it with this. There are requirements to, obviously. You need to equip to the creature, and you have to attack with 3 or more attacking creature. The +3/+0 is very nice as well, of course, on top of that. So, yeah, it's repeatable. You do have to, again, it's not like it just, like, stays in play and you're like, ha ha ha, free card advantage just by attacking. It's like, okay, like, if that creature gets dealt with, you need to, like, attach it to something else. It'll just cost you more mana throughout the game to do so. Do keep that in mind. But yeah, if you've got, like, an aggressive strategy, if you've got an equipment strategy with enough creatures swinging consistently, definitely something to consider. Absolutely. Yeah, low to the ground, pumps a decent amount, and good repeat card advantage. Next up, Poise Practitioner, a 2/3 human monk for 3 mana in white. Flurry, when you catch your second spell each turn, counter on this, scry 1. Yeah, it's not going to be worth it. I mean, the scry 1, again, is nice. Potentially, you know, card selection every single turn, but you got to cast 2 spells each turn to just select, you know, 1 card, but not even get it in your hand, right? It's just off the top of your library and go, oh, do I like it there, or do I want the bottom? Scrying is nice, but again, it's not card advantage. Next up, Arashin Sun Shield, 3/4 human warrior for 4 mana in white. When it enters, exile up to 2 cards from a single graveyard, and you can pay a single white mana to tap down a creature. Very limited card. And then finally, Furious Forebear, a 3/1 spirit warrior for 2 mana in white. When a creature control dies while this card's in your graveyard, you may pay 1 in a white. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. If that It's just, a little bit different, like reassembling Skeleton-ish to the, battlefield. It'd be seeing a lot more play. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for people who don't play against Aristocrat style decks, no, that's not the case. So this is not going to see anywhere near as much play because, well, again, you kind of got to pay a decent amount of mana to keep getting this back out. Again, unlike reassembling Skeleton, which is sure is just a 1/1, whatever, but like you just care about that as creature fodder. You're like, okay, I pay 2, it's back out. I pay 2, it's back out. I pay 2, it's back out. This one's like, okay, something died. Cool, all right. I pay 2, it's in my hand. I pay another 2, now it's back out. It's 4 mana versus 2. Yeah, you get a 3/1, but like in Commander, you don't really care that much about the extra power. You'd rather be like, oh, just keep coming back into play. There are definitely some decks for it, I'm sure, like low the ground power, but yeah, reassembling Skeleton, it's not. And with that, this episode is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. In the comments below, let me know your thoughts are on this episode. And of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.